Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Yours truly making here. Listen, for my American lovelies, little Mr. Groundhog, Puxatawny Phil, just predicted another 6 weeks of harsh winter for you guys. And for my German lovelies here and any other surrounding countries, February is usually our coldest month. But I have 3 beautiful, easy DIY, chunky, warm blankets. I have 2 knit patterns and a crochet pattern, but it doesn't matter if you're not an expert in either. All you need is your little fingers and some yarn. And these blankets will not only offer you beautiful winter cozy home decor, but functionally will keep you warm, cozy, snug via bug in a rug for these next very cold weeks. And these blankets are always so expensive, so why not make them yourself? Let's get started. Okay, for the first blanket, this is an easy, basic knit blanket. You've probably seen it all over the internet, and you've probably seen mine on my bed already because I made it last winter, but I filmed it.
Okay guys, let's get started. Leaving a long tail, I'm just going to loop through and pull the longest end of the yarn through, making my knot very tight. Now your first loop should be proportionate to the thickness of the yarn that you're using. I'm seeing how it looks. No, it's a little bit too loose for me, so I'm going back and making my loop a little bit smaller. And then basically I'm always going to go through and push another loop through and pull it through. And this is basically your chain link. And I like to call it a braid because it looks like a braid. And just always trying to keep all my loops about the same size and everything even. Now I'm starting this on my bed, so I can use my bed as a reference to how wide I want the blanket. Okay, you guys, I've got it as about wide as I want. Now let's start the next row. Now we're really starting to knit. I always like my yarn to be in the direction that I'm working. So you see how I have it laid to my right. And I am going through the top part of that braided chain link, making sure the braid is always looking at me directly and pulling just the yarn through and making a loop and being careful that all my loops are the same size, okay? That little top hump of the braid, almost like a little camel hump, and we're gonna continue and keep going. Make sure your braid doesn't twist, that your braid is always looking forward to you so you can take the top part. Okay, we're getting to the end and you see how those last 2 humps, we don't wanna miss that last hump. That makes the difference. A lot of times it disappears, but you want to make sure you go in it. So I'm going into the second to last and making sure before my very first loop knot, I'm going in that very, very last hump there. And then from now on, it's pretty easy. You don't have to turn your work, just keep it flat in front of you. And now we're going back in the other direction, making sure my yarn is laying a little bit where I can easily reach it. You see how I lay it behind the loops. Now going to the left in the direction that I'm working and starting with that last loop I made, I'm starting with the first loop of now the second row. Again, just making sure my loops are staying all the same size and they're staying flat and facing me like little horseshoes coming out. Okay guys, want to come in here and show you a little bit more detailed, show you how you need to keep your loops flat facing you. Make sure they're not turned like this. They need to be flat and open facing you like an open horseshoe. And just continuing to pull the loops through. Okay, now I've run out of yarn. I'm at the end, and I'm going to show you how I tie in a new one. Just making sure the yarn is going in the direction that you're working. You just have to feed in the new yarn from the new roll of yarn. I always like to wait till afterwards to make my knots so I can place the knots where I want them, and then also be able to make them disappear. See, I just have the two pieces here where I ended and where I began, and I'm going to do that later. And let's continue to work. Okay guys, I'm going to try to explain to you the best I can if you drop a stitch or if you drop a little bit of a roll. You see I'm coming here and I was about to pick up my next loop, and see this extra here? Somehow my whole row got pulled out there. You have to really look at the back because you want every stitch in the back to have a hump like that. So I have to see how many humps are missing. Look, this hump is missing here, so that means this one has to go through here. Okay, so at least I have all these on the same level. I think this one is missing the level here. Okay, so what I'm missing is this whole level here. This somehow got pulled out, probably when I was just moving. So you just want to go back and redo it through. So this would be the loop here, and this would be the loop here. Loop here, loop here, loop here, loop there, loop there. Make sure this is on the same, yeah, this was the one that was lower. So I got the loop there. Just make sure it's on the next level. And then the last one, see how I picked it back up? And now going from this side, everything is back on the same level. So this would be my next one. Okay, and if you turn it over, hope you can see it. You just want to make sure that all of these are right, alternating from each other. Do you see that? And if I didn't have one alternating, let's say this one was like this and the next one, then I know that I missed the loop there. So then I'd have to pull this back through, and then all my loops are scalloped now on the back. Here, 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 here. I mean, sometimes that happens. So I hope if you drop a stitch or drop a row of loops, you can pick it back up. But if you are a beginner knitter and you're not sure about the pattern, you don't have experience with how the pattern's supposed to look and be able to tell if you missed a loop, the best thing is to do, just take it apart till you get everything back on the same level and just start again. Okay, I hope you understood that and you saw what happened and how I dropped a whole row from the other side. And guys, another tip here, always keep your eyes out for a little bit of damage to the yarn. Do you see how I already have some fraying here? This yarn is made of 3 cords. 1 cord for some reason has been split. So it's better that I just cut that section out and do a end of a yarn and a new starting of a yarn like I showed you before. This will prevent my blanket coming apart or unraveling at any later time. Okay, you guys, now it's time to tie off my work. I've gotten my desired length of the blanket. We're just starting the next row like normal, pulling up the first loop and then the second loop. But now before I do the third loop, I am taking the second loop into the very first loop. See how I am reducing then and closing up the work. Again, making sure that I have a horseshoe form, always turning the loop away from me before I pull it through. This will help keep your braid flat and formed and your horseshoe form the same. Again, pulling up a loop and taking it through. One more time, pulling through a loop. To explain further what I mean, taking the loop, horseshoe form, turning away from me before I pull it through, not towards me, you will get a twist in your braid, your ending braid tie off. Okay guys, after we've made the last loop, I'm just going to cut my yarn and I am going to make a full knot by going through that loop, going through the back and just tying it off as a knot. Pull it very tightly. And the end tail of the yarn, you're just going to like feed it through and weave it through the side of your blanket so it disappears into the knit. Okay, now we're going back and we're tying off those sections where I ran out of yarn and then started another spool of yarn. See, this is what it looks like. This one end and the other end, and all you're gonna do is just tie a double knot. Being careful you don't tie too tight to keep the form of the knit the same. I pull from the top, pull from the bottom, just make sure I don't get the knot too tight. Well, the knot needs to be tight, but I don't want to pull the stitch tight or my knitting work tight. See how it should not look pulled from the other side? So now we're just going to cut the tails a little shorter. And you're just going to weave them under and through the scalloped knit of the back of your work. And you see how it just disappears in there? Cut off any excess. Be careful not to cut your blanket. I'm just working the other side in. See how everything disappears in there? Just following the pattern of the scallop back knit, cutting extra off. Even on this side, even on that side. Okay, I'm going to do all the other ones and then we're done.
For the next blanket is a crocheted pattern. Okay, and you guys probably saw in my bedroom deep cleaning video, I had been working on it and I told you I just needed to finish it. See, I've been adding on to it, so I still have yarn here. But I'm gonna finish it this week, I promise. Well, hey, I finished it.
Okay guys, let's get started. We're working with 3 strands of yarn. And I am just going through and pulling the longest length of the yarn through my tail there and making my knot as tight as possible. Now, my pointer finger and my thumb are acting as the crochet hook. So I want to have them about 1 inch apart. And I'm going to go through and grip and pull me a loop through now. I think my loop needs to be a little bit smaller. There we go. And then we're going to go through and just pull another loop through, making sure that I have the same distance between my pointer finger and thumb, and making that braid or our chain row. Just keep going through there, always adjusting. I can always re-grip with my left hand with my thumb and middle finger to hold my chain link, so I have some tension to pull through. And just keep going until I get the desired length. Okay guys, now that I've gotten my desired length, let's start with the second row. First thing I'm going to do is reach in and pull 1 more loop. Okay, now making sure my braid is facing me so I can see the upper part of the braid and the lower part, not the back part with the knots facing you, but the braided side. And I'm going to go right behind that knot in that first camel hump, half of that braid. Okay, and there should be 3 strands of yarn on top of your finger. Then you know you're in half of the braid. And yeah, this is the first one, so I'm struggling a little bit. You're gonna pull the yarn through, make your loop wide enough that you can get your thumb. Okay, I'm working here, I'm trying. Get your thumb and your pointer finger through there again. And then basically you're just gonna pull 1 loop through, doing the basic crochet single stitch. Okay, again, going in only half the top hump of that braid. Pulling a loop through. Oh, you guys, okay, I hope I get better at this. I'm always struggling to get my thumb back in there. Get in there. Okay, making sure I have the whole same distance between my pointer finger and thumb, so all my stitches stay the same. And let's try this again. 3 on the top braid. Again, it's a little bit of a struggle bus to get the thumb in there. and pulling one stitch through. And you'll see how the stitch is starting to take form. That's what we're going for there. Okay, let me show you one more time slow. Again, the top part of the braid, only 3 strands going in there, pulling the thread through or the yarn through. Thumb, oh, come on, thumb. Back through there and just pull one single stitch. Okay guys, I swear, this is the hardest row. It does get easier after this. Okay guys, now we're getting to the end, slowly to the end, and I want to slow down because just like with the knitted blanket, you have to really make sure you get in that last little camel hump, which was initially your very first chain on when you were making your chain row. And a lot of times that's missed, so I want to show you that in detail. Okay, almost getting there. Only have 2 more, including the very last one. I'll show you. See how you have that very last one right there, and this is the second to last. Okay, my last one's disappeared a little bit. Let's see if I can work that out. But this is the mistake a lot of people make, because that gets pulled so tight and then it disappears. Let me go ahead. Can I get it out of there? Let me go ahead and finish the stitch and see what happens. No, it's too tight. Okay, so I can't get my finger in there. So the best thing to do, because that one got pulled so tight, is to take it out. And you see here that truly there was 2 humps. Okay, so see 1 and 2, and that last one I wasn't able to get in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my thumb in that last one to keep it open, so the second to last one doesn't pull it tight. Doing the second to last one. And then see how that last one needs to be also crocheted. Okay, mission accomplished. See? Everything's done. Now to start each row, we are looping once again. And with this work, you do have to turn your work. So every time you loop on the end to start a new row, you have to turn your work. Okay, now remember before we only went under the braid, half of the braid? Now the braid is looking at us and we want to go under the full braid, all 6 pieces of yarn, strands of yarn. You want to go under to pull your loop through. Okay, I'm going to show you that one more time. Right behind that knot, after you've turned your work, all 6 strands. So now we're going under the full braid as opposed to just going in half of the braid when we first started. Again, you'll see the braid looking at you. Make sure all 6 are there, going in the hole, pulling it through, and looping in your single stitch. One last time, all 6 complete braid. After this, the holes get a little bigger and it's a lot easier to work faster. Again, all 6. And from here, it's easy going. You guys see here, after a while, you get a rhythm going. I'm not struggling with my thumb anymore. I've learned to just stick my pointer finger in there to grip that yarn from behind, pull it through. You really do get a rhythm going. And also I wanted to point out that when I ran out of yarn, you do have to knot when you're crocheting here. So you need to knot your new 3 strands to your 3 strands you're running out of. With all this knotting, you're able to hide the knot, but you can't do it like I did with the knitted blanket. Okay guys, slowing down here again. I just want to reiterate getting in those last stitches before you make that one loop to turn your work. We want to maintain the width of our blanket and not lose on every row stitches that our blanket starts to look like a triangle. So I'm getting there. And the second to last. And really make sure I get that last one there. And then again, making one single loop and turn everything and working back. Again, going in the first braid right after the turn knot, right here. And working again, we're going completely under the braid. But by now you should have it.
And tying off this blanket is very simple. Once you have gotten to your desired length, the last loop, you just need to knot it off. And of course I went back trimming up my knots where I had to join the ends of the yarn, but because we were knotting them as we were crocheting, a lot of them already got pulled into the crochet stitch, but some of them you do need to pull through and hide. Okay, one little tip about this crochet blanket. I love the dimension of working with the 3 strands of yarn, but maybe next time I would work with a little bit thicker yarn that I only needed 2 strands, or even a very thick yarn like the one we're going to do in the next blanket that I only needed 1 strand, because using 3 strands and a thinner yarn, I did use a lot of yarn. Okay, next we're getting started on the last blanket, another knit pattern, but we're going to do a rib stitch. And basically a rib stitch is when you're alternating between a purl and a knit. Think of the purl as the horseshoe formed stitch, which you actually see on the front of the very first knit blanket, and that scallop stitch, which we saw on the back of the original blanket. Now, I just started again chaining on and making my initial braid, but how many stitches did I use? I find it is better if you just draw it out, map it out, because you could do your rib stitch in any pattern you desire. You can alternate 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, or a little offset like I did, 2 purls, 3 knits. So basically I just drew it out, of course, a little horseshoe for my purl stitches and a squiggly for my knit stitches. Counted it out. I decided to start off with 37. I don't want it as wide as the other blankets because this is a blanket for my sofa. But then my husband said something so sweet. He was like, is it gonna be wide enough for both of us to sit under there? Oh, be still my heart. So I expanded it to 42, another 5 stitches, just calculating in another 3 knits and the last 2 purls. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, you wanna make sure that when you're mapping out the stitches you start with, in my case a purl, but if you flip it over, it's going to be the knit on the other side anyway. So I want to start with the purl and end with the purl. The next thing is we're going to start with our purl stitch. Once I had my 42 chained on stitches, and making sure you're counting the humps. Remember the camel humps, you have to come through it first. With the yarn laying behind, I am pulling 2 from back to front. That is my purl. Okay, then you have to lay the yarn in the front, so I can come from the back and pull the yarn through to the back, creating my knit stitch. Okay, this is a little tedious just for the first row that you have to lay front and back, but you'll see later it's really easy because the yarn is going to basically lay in the middle between the front and the back stitches. It's just a matter if you pull through the front from the back or you pull through the back from the front. And if your stitches in the first row look like discombobulated snaggle teeth, some are leaning forward, some are leaning backwards, it's okay. Once you start knitting it through, it's like braces will bring the teeth together. Everything will be in a straight line. Now, if you end with the same purls that you started with like I did, then you know you didn't miss any humps. You guys see now here my yarn is basically laying in the middle, and I'm just continuing with the same pattern either from the front or from the back, pulling through. You guys, let me warn you, be careful with this yarn because it is very soft, even though it's thick. And when I was first like pulling it, starting the spool, I tore off a piece, but my dog didn't mind. He enjoyed it as a little scarf. Okay, so I've been working about 3 hours. I had about 20 rows and it was way too wide. So rewind. Took everything apart and I went back to a linked on or chained on braid of just 27. And this time I was a little bit more generous with the size of my loops, which made it a lot easier to work with this thick yarn. Okay, I forgot to mention this thick yarn is a beautiful mohair that I got from Amazon. So I will make sure I'll leave that link for you down in the description box. You guys, starting with the larger loops, it went so quickly. Basically, I was within an hour at the point of 20 rows where I had then taken everything apart and started over. Please forgive my nails. That is not dirt under my nails, but I've been working on my DIY flip nightstand. That is silver leaf, rub and buff paint, probably mixed with a lot of fuzz from the yarn. Again, as you see how I thread in the new start of the yarn, and that was not the end of my spool. That was where I was not being careful taking it apart the first time that I ripped it. Okay, now it's time to bound it off, and just like with the first knit blanket, I am pulling the loop up and I am turning away from my body and pulling the next loop through. Being careful that I'm staying with my pattern, still doing knits and purls. When we bounded off with the first knit blanket, we were working from right to left. So I pulled up, turned away from my body to the right, that the top loop or braid stayed flat and not twisted in. This time we're working from the left, so I'm just pulling it up, turning it to the left away from my body, and then looping it through, continuing to have a straight braid on the top. And of course, when you get to the end, you just knot it off. Like before, I'm knotting up my loose ends. Again, very careful not to pull so tight, and cutting them off and weaving them into the knit pattern. Here's one I had on the side, very easy to weave through. And voila, my blanket is finished. Okay guys, that's the video. Listen, this blanket is actually meant for my green sofa in the living room, but because I'm working on a coffee table video for you, it's a little messy in there, but believe me, I am really enjoying it here, cuddled up having coffee in the morning. Yeah, which blanket do I like more? But before I tell you which one I like more, don't forget, I am planning to do as a request, I'm planning to do a Q&A video. I've decided to do it on the 20th of February, which happens to be my birthday. What not the perfect day to do a Q&A about my life while I'm celebrating a whole new year of my life. Yeah, back to the favorite blanket. I believe I like the crochet one. I just like the pattern, I like the 3-dimension of it. And as you see in this pic, it's also doggy approved. Yeah, let me know down in the description box which ones you like best and which pattern maybe you're gonna try. And if you do, please send me a DM over on my Instagram channel, a pic of your blanket. Number one, I would love to see it myself, and I would love to share it with the community here. Guys, when I was first working with this yarn, I was contemplating at the end of the video not to recommend it. But once I restarted it and I was working with larger loops, that is the key. I always say yarn on and make your loops comparable to the thickness of your yarn, but I wasn't making mine large enough. But then after they were large enough, this was so easy to work with. The only thing is you have to be careful not to pull so hard. Like I said, I left a piece here just to demonstrate. Pull, hello, see how easy it breaks? So be very soft-handed with it. Other than that, this thing is so thick, so warm, and usually the pure mohair blankets, those are the most expensive, sometimes $800 to $1,000. So the best thing is to make it yourself, give yourself time, and I can't tell you how warm this is for my February winter days. So you guys, thanks for watching and thanks for stopping by. And as always, yours truly, Heart Macon. Stay warm. Ciao. I knew I would screw up that name. But to tell you the truth, I would like to know which number of Punxsutawney, still can't say it, Punxsutawney Fields this is. Even if he lives 20 years, what do we have? Punxsutawney Field, 40th? Who knows? And is Punxsutawney male or female? I bet you it's female, because she always has to give birth to the next Punxsutawney Field. Okay, I've said the name correctly, but I guarantee when I start again, I'm gonna screw it up. For my American lovelies, the little Mr. Groundhog Punxsutawney.